Vice President Dick Cheney is being treated for it. War correspondent David Bloom died from it. DVT, otherwise known as deep vein thrombosis, a potentially deadly. March is DVT Awareness Month, and with us in New York is David Bloom's widow, Melanie. She's a spokeswoman for the Coalition to Prevent DVT. Melanie, thanks for being with us. You bet. And if you would just begin by telling us David's story and what happened in Iraq.
Well, when David was covering the war in Iraq for NBC News, he developed some leg pain and complained of cramping legs. He had been sleeping every night in this tank with his knees pulled to his chin and was dehydrated. But when he mentioned the leg pain, we didn't think anything about it. I had never heard of DVT before I got the call that David had passed away from it. So 2 nights after his call about leg cramps, David died. What I've since learned is that that was a huge warning sign for deep vein thrombosis.
That's right, and you and I have spoken many times. I actually had the condition myself, and it is absolutely unbelievable that it can turn into something so very serious when you honestly think, at least for me, that you may have just pulled a muscle.
Exactly. I mean, David did have the leg pain, but he sort of blew it off. I mean, and so did I. Having never heard of DVT, didn't know about the warning signs and risk factors, so we didn't give it the weight that it deserved. And that's what I've been doing, working with the Coalition to Prevent DVT, to try to really make people aware that this is serious. This condition takes more lives each year than AIDS and breast cancer combined. And every year in America, 300,000 people die from this. And David was lucky enough to have the leg pain, which is a warning sign, but unlucky in that we didn't have the awareness to know what that meant and what to do.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because both David and I were certainly not in the age group that is so common for DVT. Usually, much older people are getting these types of conditions, and they're much less active. So as we put those on the screen, and again, as you said, I knew nothing about it when they told me I had it either. Some of those risk factors that we're looking at now, the doctors were asking me all the time, could you be pregnant? Are you in birth control? Have you smoked? Is there any of this in your family history? I imagine that a lot of those questions were being bounced around with the physicians and inside your mind as well.
Right. I've since learned that these are some common risk factors, along with long-haul flights. And in Vice President Cheney's case, he was in an airplane for 60 hours in a few days' time. So long-haul flights are a risk factor, as you showed, pregnancy, birth control pill, cancer patients are at higher risk, and our website, preventdvt.org, has a whole list of risk factors, and they say if you have 3 or more risk factors at any given time, you could be at risk for developing a DVT and or fatal pulmonary embolism, as in David's case.
And that's the thing to clarify here. If you have a blood clot, what ends up being sometimes fatal, and certainly in David's case, is when you have that pulmonary embolism, where it breaks apart. I think we have some video to show a little bit about how that can work in your veins.
That's right. It's when the clot breaks free and travels to the lungs. And 2 million Americans each year will develop the blood clot, the DVT. And out of that, 300,000 will die from the pulmonary embolism, which is essentially the clot traveling to the lungs. So prevention is key here to prevent the DVT from forming, or if it does form, to know to get immediate treatment so it doesn't result in a fatal pulmonary embolism.
What has your reception been when you talk to people about this, Melanie? Do they look at you like DVT, deep vein thrombosis? I mean, do they have any understanding of what that is?
When I first started, I joined with the Coalition to Prevent DVT 3 years ago, and yes, I got the blank face.
Right.
What? DVT is what? It's interesting, in these 3 years, we've really moved the needle of awareness, and that's so gratifying. Our campaign this year is a grassroots effort. I'm traveling the nation, speaking at hospitals, meeting with the doctors and the patients and the caregivers to really put it on the forefront of the physicians' minds, because there's a big miss between the staggering number of deaths each year from this and the awareness of the American people and the doctors out there.
Well, there's no question about that. And when we talk about Vice President Dick Cheney, very sensitively want to say that sometimes when someone in the public eye is diagnosed with this condition, or this event, I should say, it does help with awareness.
It does, and unfortunately, David's face became sort of the personal face of DVT. And I've just worked to take that tragedy and try to transform it into something positive and raise awareness. And when I started this campaign with the Coalition, I told myself if one life is saved, then David's death will not have been in vain. And so we're working to raise awareness about DVT, preventdvt.org.
Well, you look terrific, and we love having you as a guest. And how are the kids doing?
The kids are great. Thanks for asking, Heidi. They're happy children, and David's spirit lives on in their shining, smiling faces, and they're my little mini spokespeople. They wear their DVT pins and help me out in March, so they're doing really well. Thanks,
well,
Heidi.
Good. We're looking at some pictures of them now. We so appreciate your time, Melanie Bloom. DVT Awareness Month right now, the month of March. Thanks again, Melanie. Nice to see you.
You too.
Find a tool to assess your own risk for DVT and learn how to identify the symptoms at preventdvt.org. Check it out, everybody.